So I'll repeat. A true sovereign is the guardian of the land, just like the spirit of the land is the spiritual guardian. But anyone else who wants to look after the land is a guardian, really. And the land anciently is known as the Grail. We are also Grails. But the land itself was known as the bigger Grail, in which we are all contained, together with all the wonderful plants and creatures and nature and so on. But it's our task as gardeners, as it were, that's the old teaching, we're all incarnated to learn how to be good gardeners of the land, to make it into a Garden of Eden. And that's where we make the Grail into a holy Grail, a pure Grail, holy. And for that we have to learn to do the right thing in the right place at the right time and so on. How to love, care for it and love, like a good gardener cares and looks after all the plants and make sure they all grow in the best way possible and no plant tries to gobble up another, things like that. just help everything go right. So we're needed. We are needed. It's rather nice to know that. Many people despair when they think their use is finished. There are many people who retired. I know some of them in the past. They feel they've no use anymore. Particularly applies to men, I think, more than women maybe. Women are quite good at inventing new things to do, but men are not quite so good on the whole. So you feel your work's done, you've retired, and then, unless you've got a lovely garden to look after, you sort of think, oh God, I've no use anymore. And then it causes depression and problems like that. But it's good to know that we're all needed. So even if you haven't got a garden, you've got nature to get out into. Even towns and so on can be made more beautiful than they are as well. And try and make this planet into a Garden of Eden. But also we're meant to protect it. To protect the good places, protect the holy places, protect each other, care for each other, and protect us from harm and things like that. And the greatest of such guardians, now this is the key point, the greatest of such guardians are known as swans. Swans. Did you know that? And that's why the swan is the royal bird. It's the guardian of royal palaces and holy places. And swans act as gatekeepers. So that, going from the butterfly, dropping gold as it flies, which I do see, I have seen. So I can confirm what Steiner saw and wrote about it, or somebody wrote about it for him. He spoke about it. I've seen that, but going from those butterflies right up to the highest level, really, the swan, symbolize these great beings, great souls known as swans, are the gatekeepers, and they guard holy places, and they look after us as well. So they're the gatekeepers. The swan is known as the poet, a creator. A great poet is a creator. And so in the Orphic and Christian mysteries, Dionysus, Orpheus, and Jesus resurrected and ascended to become swans, symbolically speaking. Jesus was portrayed as a swan after his ascension, in case you didn't know. So interesting, isn't it? And such great souls are hierophants of the mysteries, gatekeepers between heaven and earth. And they teach us, and they test us. So that's what hierophants do. They teach and they test, and help us on the way to go further and further into the mystery of life. Now, mystery is a drama of initiation in which we perform as actors on the stage of the world, as Shakespeare says. That's what a mystery is. It's from the Greek word mysteria, and those who perform their, learning to be actors on the stage, they were known as mystaes, which we get the word mystic from. Mystic. So you're trying to be in tune with heaven and earth and act it out on the stage of the world. We're all doing that. We're all in this great mystery together. So it's the drama of life, in which we get to know what is true, what is not, until we really know all truth. And in the process, we go through various degrees of what's called initiation. It's from the Latin word initio, means entering into the mystery. So different degrees or levels of it. So we go through various degrees, as they're called, of initiation, until ultimately we free ourselves from all that is not good and soar like swans into a universal consciousness of light, of truth and delight. Again, the Hebrew word for light that's in the Bible, it's translated as light, actually means delight, happiness. That's why the great teachers go around and keep saying, be happy, be delight. And then if you're full of delight, you'll shine with light. It's just natural, it just happens. And we're illuminated at the same time. So that's real delight, is knowing you've done something good, something true, out of love, and then it brings delight. So this is all called the mystical marriage, because in effect we marry heaven and earth, male and female, inner and outer, in ourselves and in our lives, in love. And to help us, we have the sky above us to represent heaven, and the ground beneath our feet to represent the earth. They're symbols, if you like, of something even greater than that. And there is wisdom in both, in which we use the traditional language of symbolism and allegory to comprehend and learn what to do. So this is where I'm going to start to show the pictures. So heaven is represented by this celestial zodiac in the sky above us. Now the word zodiac, is a Greek word, means wheel of life. A circle that turns, it's energy circle, energy form, full of life. A wheel of life. And the Vedic name, equivalent name, is chakra. So the zodiac is a chakra. And that's the wheel of life that we see in the sky, and also we have many of them on earth and in ourselves. So another way of looking at this zodiac in the sky is a chakra. A mighty big chakra for us. So the zodiac is defined by the circumference of the circle. The circumference is the ecliptic, and that's the sun's path. So you see the red and yellow dots on it, they represent the sun at different times of the year, these solstices and equinoxes, as it is now. The centre of the zodiac is called the occult pole, because there's no star that marks it. Now most of the star maps you'll get are based on the star Polaris, which is the North Pole star. But it's not the centre of the zodiac. It's very important to know that. Polaris, because of the Earth tips a bit and wobbles, it means the projection of the North Pole up into the sky is wobbling around its true centre. The true centre is the occult pole, and that's the centre of the zodiac. And for the North Pole projecting to the sky, in the wobble, it goes 26,000 years to go all the way around that circle, which you can see there. And our present North Pole star is the actual star Arcas, which is rather important. And then around the occult pole, you can see the dragon. Draco is called in Latin. Draco, the dragon, wrapping itself around the occult pole and guarding what's called the tree of life. That is, the tree of life is like the axis mundi, the axis of the world or axis of the universe. And it's also known as the tree of life. It's also the tree on which hangs the golden fleece that the Argonauts came in search of. Now, if you find that tree in the centre, you become illumined, and that's what's meant by the golden fleece. You become illumined, but you can only find it if you're humble enough. Don't go in proudly. We're going to have a story of that later on. I'm going to tell about somebody who's a bit too proud. But if you go in true humility and love and so on, which is called the sacrifice of the Lamb of God, that's Aries. Aries rules the head. And so you get the idea of the sign of Aries, the nose and the eyebrows. Well, you have to, and that's the centre of yours, when your ego gets very strong, you know, that, I know exactly what to do. You don't know, I'm in charge. Well, you have to sacrifice that in love, in humility. And so it goes down to the feet, and that has the power to raise the central energy called the Kundalini up the spine to bring illumination. So that's how to find this centre, the tree of life, going right into the heart of the mystery. So the main axis of the zodiac actually goes between the 2 points I've shown with the red dots at each end, which is where the meridian of the Milky Way galaxy crosses the ecliptic. They're the only 2 fixed points in the sky, because stars are always moving a little bit. But those are 2 fixed points over very, very, very long periods of time. And so the main diameter of the zodiac is that yellow line that I've drawn there. So it goes between the 2 fixed points, and also through the centre, of course, but also goes through this star Arcas, which is our present North Pole star. And that was taken as marking when that happens, is when the solstice suns are at those fixed points, midwinter and summer sun, then that's taken as the end of our great age of 26,000 years approximately, and the start of a new great age. And that's the time we live in right now. So it's good to get to know these things and to realise that we're actually in a hugely important time, which requires a certain amount of breakdown in order to break through into the new. And but we have to help that happen in the best possible way possible. Now, from the main axis of the zodiac, all geometry within the circle is developed, such as the 12 zodiac signs. The 12 zodiac signs consist of 12 equal sectors of the circle, and each sector is named after the constellation on the ecliptic that is associated with that sector. Now, this is the ideal, perfect geometry and number and so on. This is the ideal. But there's also the real. For instance, we each have perfect geometry behind us, and we're all the same from that perfection. That's the ideal. But our body and our minds grow a little bit differently. We're the dragon that's, moving around a bit, not so ideal or fixed, and so we're the real. So one needs to understand there's always these 2 things go on. There's the ideal and there's the real. Ideal and real, it comes into every aspect of life. So if we go to the real signs, you see each sector is not all the same. And that's because the constellations are of varying sizes. which means the various divisions, the real divisions of the zodiac are sectors of varying sizes, each one depending on the size of the constellation, which gives the sector its name. And there are profound reasons for all these differences, but I won't go into that now. Anyway, I don't know it all anyway. So the main thing to remember is there's always the ideal and there's always the real. And they act together like twins, like Gemini. I'm going to come to Gemini a bit further on, but that's the kind of secret of life. And the key is to get for the one to get to know and love the other, rather than having a fighting relationship. Now the Milky Way, I've coloured in yellow. That's the Milky Way, coloured in yellow on the chart. So you sort of yellow ochre, make it stand out. And then you can see, begin to see Cygnus the swan that flies in the Milky Way. So that's the position of the swan. So in the large picture you can see it a bit more clearly. It's not far from the occult pole. The swan is also, Cygnus the swan is also known as the Northern Cross, as the star connections make it look like a cross, and it is, as seen, it is the Northern Cross because it's seen from the northern hemisphere of the world. So it's the Northern Cross. And yet it's a swan. Two things in one. Again, a double truth, a Gemini effect. Now, swans have long necks in relation to their bodies, and they stretch out their wings when flying, once they've managed to get off the water, that is. And the star Albirea marks the swan's head, and the star Deneb marks its tail, or root chakra. Deneb actually means tail, but that's the root chakra of the swan. In terms of the cross, it's the other way around. Albirea is the base of the cross, and Deneb is the crown of the cross. And Deneb, the star Deneb, is one of the brightest stars in the sky. So it's a real great marker for navigation, for instance. Now, going to the ancient Egyptians, who knew quite a few things, the Milky Way was known to them as their goddess Nut, which means heaven. And she's represented in hieroglyphics in this way I'm going to show. And her child Horus is symbolized as a hawk. And in this hieroglyphic picture, you can see it just born, just being born. There it is. A hawk or falcon, as some people call it. It's got the sun on its head. Horus is equated with the sun because it represents the light of God, the incarnate light of God. So the sun is shown as moving through Nut's body until born in the form of the hawk or falcon. And the hawk or falcon is equivalent to the swan in other mystery traditions. So if we go back to the star map, we see Cygnus, the swan, is the child within the womb of the goddess Nut. The head of the goddess Nut is up there in the region of Auriga, and her legs come down here with the what's called the rift in the Milky Way, representing division of her body into her two legs, as it were. So there you see her child as a swan, Cygnus the swan, has his head down, ready to be born, just the moment before birth, ready to be born. And when born, the child will appear between Nut's legs, which is represented by this, as I said, this great rift. So, ready to be born, from her womb, down the birth canal, down between her legs. But the actual place of birth is down here, near the cusp of Sagittarius and Scorpio Ophiuchus, in that dark area there. And that's very close to the centre of the Milky Way galaxy, the heart of the Milky Way galaxy, which is an even greater truth. So that's to do with birth. And then one lives one's life. Horus lives his or her life on earth, and then dies, and done a good life, there'll be a resurrection and ascension, or return to the womb of the Great Mother in heaven. So in other words, the child Horus, in terms of the Egyptian tradition, becomes the pharaoh with his queen, and they care for the people, care for the land, and rule in a good way, in service to humanity and the planet. And in that service, they're symbolised in the Egyptian tradition, also the Orphic and Christian traditions, as the bull. On earth, we're the bull. But upon death, we resurrect, Horus resurrects, and ascends again as the falcon, or in the Dionysian tradition, as the and Christian tradition as the swan. So, if you know these wisdom traditions or haven't heard of them perhaps before, this is the story of Dionysus, Orpheus, and Jesus, who are bulls on earth. Jesus' father was symbolised as a bull, an ox, a bull put to service as the ox. And it's kept quiet by the Roman Catholic Church, unfortunately, but that's the symbol of Jesus' father. So Jesus himself, as the son of Joseph of Nazareth, he's a bull, young bull too, but he grows up and he dies, resurrects, and becomes the swan, ascends the swan. And this was known to the early Christians. So there's a depiction, a carving of Jesus as the swan on a sarcophagus that's in Lisbon, a convent in Lisbon. And there are other examples of this sort of thing. So the early Christians knew this thing very, very, very clearly. But there, it's a very clever carving, because he's also depicting the cross. He's both the swan and the cross. Now the cross is usually made out to be painful and difficult, my life on earth, difficulty. But actually, it represents the wisdom. It's a cross of light. Cross of light, which sets in motion, wisdom sets in motion our whole life process and so on. And hence they go through what's called the 4 stages of symbolised by the alchemical elements. But that cross of light is the wisdom, and that's known as the Father or Spirit. And the swan is the Son, Jesus. This is why Jesus says, the Father and I are one. Father and I are one. I'm the swan, the Father's the cross, we are one. So in the sky, going back to the sky, that's the enlarged picture of Cygnus the swan, to show more clearly that is also the cross. So this is the double truth, the swan and the cross. Everything's a double truth. Francis Bacon, one of my teachers, summed it up as by the statement, the truth of being and the truth of knowing are one. The truth of being is the initial wisdom. And the truth of knowing is the soul that's come to know that wisdom by doing its best in love on earth. Now the double truth multiplies. This is the secret of life. It multiplies itself. The 2 become 4, the 4 become 8, and so on, just like cell division. And the science of this is well told in the mythology of the Gemini, whose parents are Leda and the Swan. Gemini is Latin for twins. So the swan is the god Zeus, and the goddess Leda is a swan. So you have to get used to this double truth portrayal that the artists use as well. The swan is Zeus, and Leda, the goddess, is a swan. I have to keep flipping it around. Both are divine beings. Both are symbolized as swans. And they're children of the Gemini. So Leda lays 2 swan eggs, gives 2 sets of twins, the immortal twins and the mortal twins. And each set is composed of a brother and a sister, who together compose a swan that is both male and female in one. And this arrangement is given in Genesis chapter 1, wherein man, which means mind or soul, that's the original meaning of man, mind or soul, is created male-female in the likeness of God. Each of us as a soul is male-female. And the Hebrew name translated as God in Genesis is actually Elohim, nowadays pronounced and spelled as Elohim. Elohim consists of Al, the Divine Father, and Allah, the Divine Mother, combined together in a unity of love. Elohim, Al and Allah. And that's why when we're made in the likeness of Elohim, we are male, female. Now in the Gemini story, the twins love each other dearly. And when the mortal twin dies, the immortal twin surrenders his immortality and descends into mortality to help resurrect his mortal twin. And in their joint ascension together, both twins become immortal mortals. Son of God, Son of Man. Immortal mortal. And this is what's represented by the swan cross. Now, the Gemini twins are also symbolized as spear shakers or Shakespeares. Many people don't know this. So there's a nice picture, 16th century picture showing them riding white horses, wearing golden helmets with flames of fire on top of them, and carrying long spears, and they're called spear shakers or Shakespeares. So the marriage of heaven and earth, of immortal spirit with mortal soul, is an ancient knowledge and art. And this is acted out on earth. Hence the zodiac of heaven can also be found on earth, multiplied many times over. And the earthly representation of heaven is the stage on which we act our parts, all to bring about the mystical marriage. I want to go now to briefly show the 3 lands of the British Isles, each with their own zodiac: Scotland, Ireland and Britain. And these are representative of what's known as the triple goddess. The triple goddess. One goddess, but 3 aspects to her, which are symbolized in different ways. And one of the main symbols, of course, is her three main stages of life. There's the maiden, the mother, and then the white woman. Now, you're probably going to ask me which is which. I don't know. And perhaps it doesn't matter so much. But there they are, in a very, very special, close relationship like that. Perfect relationship, really. But one of these three is the landscape zodiac of Britain, which is nowadays split into England and Wales. So that's the zodiac in the ideal sense, with the 12 equal signs, and the one which gatekeeper mostly working with is the real, with the unequal signs like that. Now, if you look at the Milky Way on this chart is that yellow dotted line going between London and St Helens, up near Manchester and Liverpool, where they've erected this wonderful sculpture called the Tree on an old mine, which is extraordinary in itself. And close by is Preston. Close by the St Helens is a place called Preston. And there they got a Northern Shakespeare playhouse. There used to be one there in Shakespeare's time, but then a new one is being built now in commemoration of that. And then you got in London, you got things like the Globe Theatre, which is another Shakespeare centre there in London, which is the most famous one really. And then in the middle, you've got Stratford-upon-Avon, the Royal Shakespeare Theatre and the Royal Shakespeare Company that's centred there. So there are 3 Shakespeare centres along there, 2 at each end of the Milky Way and one virtually in the middle of it, in the sign of Cygnus, actually marking the star Deneb. Now, coming right down into the Shakespeare country, which is also the Swan country, there are actually 2 swans, Gemini made up of 2, not just one, but 2. One's immortal and the other's mortal. But the immortal flies down to help its twin mortal, his mortal twin, to resurrect and rise up again. Mortal twins died, so the immortal twin, out of love, surrenders his or her immortality and comes down to the earth, helps his brother, sister, and after the death, takes them through resurrection into ascension and so on. So they rise up as the mortal immortals, 2 swans together known as the heavenly swans in the myth. So this is what I'm showing you now is a chart of one of the 2 swans in the Swan area of Shakespeare country. And it's laid out like a cross, and the cross is made up of 2 of double ley lines. It's quite unusual. Find north-south double ley line, 2 lines close together, and an east-west double ley line close together like that, marked by sacred sites, old sacred sites, and churches and so on. So I've researched this many times and many years to prove it's true, but one can also dowse it and so on like that. And you'll see the rollright stones mark the foot of the swan. So they represent the star Deneb, but in terms of the immortal sense, it's in terms of the cross, the immortal cross. Brell's Hill is the centre or heart of this swan. And the Pillartons, Pillarton Hersey, Pillarton Priors, marks the centre of the throat chakra, although the swan has a long neck, so the throat is quite extensive, really. And a place called Compton Verney, which you just see north of the Pillartons, that, to Sarah and me, functions like an outer major chakra, which for us, the entrance to the outer major chakra is the back of the neck, top of the throat, back of the neck. But that gives the awareness. It's called the pan chakra because it gives an awareness of the universe, universal things. But it's where the Holy Spirit breathes into us to give us inspiration, inspires the heart with wisdom. So the Holy Spirit is made up of the holy breath plus the wisdom together. It's a fiery breath. Breathes itself into us, inspires us, and then we can act under inspiration. And then you've got Warwick, and a particular place in Warwick called Guy's Cliff, which is very important. Mark the brow and the crown chakra of it. So that's the immortal swan. And then the mortal swan actually corresponds to Cygnus in the sky projected down onto the earth. This is where it would end up in this way, and it stretches between Stratford-upon-Avon and Banbury, and the Pilliton Hersey, Pilliton Priors marks the heart centre of that. So this is why Stratford-upon-Avon has become so important. And Banbury used to be very important in the old days. Maybe it still will be once it recovers itself. And they join together in a kind of wedlock in this way, so to put the two together in this diagram. So they link together through the heart of the mortal and the throat of the immortal, which is interesting. At Pilliton Hersey, Pilliton Priors, the junction. Now one can take this further, which we've done, and realise that the Pillitons are actually the centre of a great zodiac. The circle going through Guy's Cliff in Warwick and through the Rollrights and going through other very key places. And the geometry in that suddenly appears with these ley lines and so on to give the Solomon's seal, which can, once we make it a truly holy place, shine with light as what's called the blazing star or Christ star of light. It's not quite there yet, but we have to work very, very hard at this. Because once it shines with such a light, guiding light like that, it will start to manifest what's meant by the sovereignty of the land. And then it will help the whole country. Now let's go to the Rollrights, because you're going to go looking at the Rollrights today. This is an area map from Google Earth to show where the Rollrights are. Now the Rollrights is a collection of stones. It's a collective name for a group of enigmatic prehistoric monuments located next to an ancient ridgeway known as the Jurassic Way, which the road roughly follows. It's on the border between the English counties of Oxfordshire and Warwickshire. And the ridge of hills with this ancient ridgeway passing through the Rollrights marks the northern end of the Cotswold Hills. And the name Rollright, according to some researchers, is possibly from the Brythonic phrase Rodland Rix, which means wheel enclosure groove. Wherein Rodland means the wheel enclosure, refers to the stone circle, and Rix, which means groove, refers to the valley to the south of the stone circle, which is an important valley. And in this southern valley there's a sacred spring at Little Rollrights that is connected via an ancient ceremonial path with the Rollright stones. So in folklore, it's said that at midnight the stones go down to the spring to drink of its pure waters. Every midnight. Busy stones. And then to the north of the Rollrights, the ridge of hills descends sharply to the land below, in which lies Long Compton, what we're in now, and the main road to Shipston-on-Stour, Stratford-upon-Avon and Warwick. Brails Hill and Warwick lie directly north as the crow flies from the Rollrights. So the Rollright site is made up of three existing visible monuments. There are other invisible ones too. So first there's a megalithic portal dolmen called the Whispering Knights, then a megalithic stone circle called the King's Men, and a solitary monolith called the King's Stone. Now the megalithic portal dolmen called the Whispering Knights,
it's the whispering goddesses.
that's the picture of it. They're the remains of an early or middle Neolithic portal dolmen burial chamber, estimated to date to between 3,800 and 3000 BC. And the five large megalithic stones probably once, one of these five stones probably once formed the roof of the chamber. Then we have the Rollright stone circle itself. This was, what's the date of this? This was a late Neolithic stone circle, also known as a cromlech. It's 33 metres or 108 feet in diameter. It's an important number, probably dating to around 2500 BC. Now these stones was originally a wall of stones, not individual stones set apart from one another as per most stone circles, so it's unusual. It therefore made a walled enclosure open to the sky, with a single entrance from the south-southeast direction. The entrance has extra stones either side of it, thereby providing a porch or narthex to the sacred enclosure of the temple. And directly opposite the entrance, on the other side of the circle, stands the highest stone of the whole stone circle, acting like a president in charge of all proceedings. Important stone. Then there's the solitary monolith called the King's Stone. This is a solitary weathered monolith located north-northeast of the stone circle on the other side of the ridgeway, which is now a road. It is thought to have been either placed as an outlier to the Neolithic stone circle or erected later as a marker to the Bronze Age burial site close to it. And that lies in the picture, it lies just behind that stone. The Bronze Age burial site consists of a ditched hemispherical burial mound, dated to approximately 1800 BC, and a hemispherical cairn burial mound. That's a burial mound made of stones rather than earth. That's dated to around 1770 BC. The monolith looks the shape it does due to the many people, usually women, who have visited over the centuries and millennia, who at midnight would touch it with their breasts to promote fertility, and who chip pieces of the stone to take home with them in the belief that the stone fragments would enable them to have a child. And the Rollright monuments seem to have attracted more legends than almost any other prehistoric site in England. And the main ones concern how the stones represent people, or people who have been petrified by magic, how they are sources of fertility, and how they act as oracles. So in Camden's Britannia, dated 1586, he states that the common people usually call them roll-rick stones, and dreameth that they were sometimes men by a wonderful metamorphosis turned into hard stones. And according to the most complete version of the tale, collected by Arthur Evans from local people and published in Folklore in 1895, a Saxon, that's a Danish king, who wanted to become High King of all England, i.e. Britain, came to the Rollrights with his knights and courtiers. And there he was challenged by a witch. A witch is derived from Wicca. The Wicca tribe used to have their headquarters here. Wicca tribe. And a true Wicca was a wise man or woman. That's what a witch means. So he's challenged by a witch, a Wicca man or woman, who said, 7 long strides shalt thou take, and if Long Compton thou canst see, King of England thou shalt be. So the king strode forward, and as he took his 6th stride, he shouted, stick, stock, stone, as King of England I shall be known. Pride. What happens with pride? Pride before a fall? So as he took his 7th stride, the king was confronted by a mound of earth that rose up magically before him, which is the Bronze Age burial mounds, which blocked his view of the valley below. And the witch then said, as Long Compton thou canst not see, King of England thou shalt not be. Rise up, stick, stand still, stone, for King of England thou shalt be none. Thou and thy men all stone shall be, and I myself an elder tree. And so the king became the king's stone, and his knights and courtiers, the king's men, became the stone circle. And those knights who plotted against the king, the whispering knights, became the stones of the portal domen, and the witch became an elder tree. Now what the king should have seen, which I hope you'll see, when you go up there, is this. So you have to go from the king's stone, stride north up the little hill on top of the barrows, and then look north, and you'll see there's a dip in the nearby hills, and beyond that you'll see Braille's Hill, the heart chakra of this swan. And then you might see more than that. Very important. And then Long Compton is down the hill at the foot of it. So if you can see Long Compton and understand how this is a great landscape temple, you realise, to move through the chakras, you go through Long Compton. So the 7 long strides signify the 7 great initiations, all of which need to be passed by anyone who would become High King of all Britain. And seeing is to do with revelation, with the revelation granted with the 7th stride, or of initiation, which signifies the full illumination that crowns the initiate with a golden halo, or crown of glory. And to see not only Long Compton, but also Braille's Hill beyond, would mean that the initiate was properly centred on the Swan landscape axis and could see beyond the intermediate hills to the heart chakra Braille's and all that is there. Now the elder tree, how am I doing for time? I started a bit late, so I'm the elder tree, give you more sense of it, the elder tree is known as the guardian tree or gatekeeper. How about that? So besides the butterfly, you've got the tree. It's also known as the death tree, as it represents death followed by resurrection or renewal of life. It particularly represents the sacrificial psychological death that follows a life of service, of charity, which leads to an initiatory resurrection, revelation, and ascension to a state of illumined consciousness. In other words, this is what makes a witch, which means wise person, an elder of the community. Such an elder is a gatekeeper, who stands in the gateway between earth and heaven, mortality and immortality, and marries them both. The witch's magic wand is made of elder, Witch's pipe or whistle is made of elder. Witches ride on elder sticks, which are erroneously known as broomsticks, but actually elder. And Jesus is said to have been crucified on a cross made of elder. And elder trees are planted around sacred sites and homes to give protection. And cradles were built from elder wood to protect the babies. Then the folklore regarding stones as representations of people refers to the Hierophant, who is symbolised as a stone known as the foundation stone of the universe, in which is all wisdom. The Hierophant is the one who speaks the truth, revealing the truth. In other words, the Hierophant is an oracle. Moreover, it works both ways. Stones also are oracles. Stones contain wisdom, and by listening to the stones in the right way, we can often hear truth being taught to us. We first have to listen, and listen in a loving way. This increases our awareness and opens our outer major chakra so as to receive inspiration. Then we have to think about what we hear and are inspired by, see it in our imagination as a vision, and put it into action. And if the result is good and true, then we can speak the truth outwardly to others, sharing what we now know. Because we're gatekeepers. So I'll finish there. Thank you.